What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Meran podcast. Today, my guest is Jason Arens. Jason is a skier, FIS judge, and marketing director at Surface Skis and Joystick Poles. He's heavily involved in the ski industry as he's been traveling the world judging the biggest events for years now. Some of those include Dew Tour, X Games, World Cups, and recently the Olympics in China. Aside from that, Jason is a great guy who's also extremely passionate and knowledgeable about skiing. So, this episode will be the part two of our discussion. If you haven't listened to part one yet, go check it out. In this episode, we keep talking about the judging side of things. We talk about his experience going to Beijing for the Olympics. We talk about his job as a trick caller over there, some judging controversies that have happened in the past couple of years, the golden age of women's skiing that's happening right now in competitions, and also his work over at Surface Skis and Joystick Poles. Big thanks to the patrons on Patreon, Will Cameron and Raf Diaz, and also to the sponsors of this episode, Axis Board Shop, Planks Clothing, and Dick Ann's Restaurants. Let's go. I want to touch on something because you touched on it a bit. You talked about it's a bummer when after an event the attention is on the judges and not necessarily the skiing or the event itself. There's two controversies that I had in mind going in that I wanted to talk with you that didn't seem like major controversies to me, but I understand where they came from. First up is Henrik at X Games Big Air a year ago in 2021, where he did a switch dub 18, was scored too low, or, there was a lot of controversy afterwards on, Henrik getting badly judged. And, that was kind of the talk of the town. It seemed like no one was talking about Rigetli. And what was the podium? Rigetli, A-Hall, and I'm missing the third one.
Antoine, I think.
Yeah, Antoine Adlies.
Maybe Antoine. Yeah, it sounds right.
And I think ABM was fourth and Henrik got fifth. And my whole thing, from what I remember watching the comp, was that even if he would have gotten a better score for that, in my opinion, he still wasn't on the podium. From what I remember. But I want to have your take on the reaction and the event, and what do you remember from that exactly?
Yeah, again, that's another one that X Games is I guess what the Olympics, I guess, a little bit took that place this year, where it's just the one contest where everybody has their eyes on it. It's on TV. It's very visible. When you judge a World Cup and an event happens and a result comes down, you don't hear any feedback except for the people that are physically there.
Yeah, because no one watched it.
Nobody watched it. Yeah, I mean, where do you even watch it? Do you have the Peacock app and are you streaming this live? A lot of these events are in other countries in which the time frame doesn't really line up. At X Games, prime time, everyone's watching it, everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah.
And obviously it's so funny too, because before I talk about that specific thing, I've been at X Games when Henrik wins, and the judges are the heroes of skiing because we saved skiing because style prevailed and Henrik won. And then you're there the next year and he doesn't do so well, and the judges ruined skiing because they didn't recognize what real style was. And again, who's to define real style? Obviously I'd say Henrik, out of anybody, has pretty good style by any definition of the word, his composition of everything. But at that particular X Games, it really, the score, maybe the score was lower than it could have been. That X Games system is way different than any other judging system we use, and it's intended to be spur the moment and exciting. It could have been a couple points higher. I don't think it necessarily would have changed anything. And ultimately, it was a switch double wobble 18 safety, and the safety was meticulous. It was perfect, but it's a safety grab. And we were really, that year especially, A-Hall did the Ford dub 16 same hand nose.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing the switch dub 18 Buicks, and everyone was really having this nice grab variety, these really difficult tricks. And
ABM did switch triple octo to octo.
Octo to octo. Again, we were weighing heavily on that. And I just think, we did. I think he ended up getting a 38 on the switch dub bio 18.
Mm-hmm.
Had he gotten a little bit higher, a 41 on that, maybe he would have beat ABM and got fourth place. But still, ultimately, that day I felt that the other people beat him. And Henrik did ski well, and I loved his tricks. And like again, not to knock anything, but it was the narrative again of like, okay, we didn't recognize style because the internet loves Henrik, and we rewarded evil because we let this like kid. I mean, and again, like that year too. Anyone that wants to say anything about what Andre could have done better, like get out of here. He it was literal perfection in that contest. He did the trip 19. He did the trip 12 pullback that was the first I had ever seen. He won that contest at the gate and didn't even need to ski anymore, you know. But um, it's just it's so visible, and like when Henrik doesn't do well, like people care about Henrik because Henrik represents skiing to a lot of people, and there's a lot more opinions about him. I think Matej is the new Henrik and kind of getting that same exact thing now, where it's just like the ski culture wants to embrace them, and they have no problem throwing judging under the bus if they
Yeah.
think otherwise, you know.
And something that I thought was funny about that situation is that there's always been some talks through the years that Henrik has a favorable, um, I don't know how you say that. That
Penny points, you know, he's getting hooked up for
Yeah, Henrik is kind of favored by the judges because judges love him. Let's say, if the same trick was done by another dude, he wouldn't get as much points.
yeah. I mean, we get accused of that frequently, you know. Like
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean,
And then it's funny that when he doesn't get a high score, it's like, oh, they hate Henrik. Well, it's like, do they love him or do they hate him? Like, which one is it?
exactly, you know, and it's like it's day by day, you know. And again, we really try to be consistent. It is more or less the same judges at these events, and we really do care about it. But yeah, sometimes stuff just turns out like a different way than maybe the core wanted it to happen, you know. And I walked out of that Olympic slopestyle booth this year, and I was like, man, like we dodged a bullet. I mean, not necessarily dodged a bullet, maybe got hooked up. Like A Hall winning, I think was a blessing for skiing. Like Joss winning, Oystein winning, those were
Hmm.
godsends for skiing. For those people, for what they represent, for what they brought to skiing, for them to win that event on that level, that's huge. It really helps to have the right people as the spokespeople that come through like as the Olympic winners. You know, you never want somebody that you don't feel like represents the sport to win those contests. You know, and I feel like that's a bit what I feel like had it been the opposite, had Mark McMorris missed a grab and Max Perot was the one that should have gone up,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have said anything because it's Mark McMorris, not Max Perot, and just the way the narratives, you know, the narratives behind it all.
And another controversy, which is same event, different year, is this year with Matej. Seems like there was a score miss. Like on that, I'm curious to have your explanation, but to me, it really seemed like a mistake. Or it goes back to what we were saying as the more rules you bring in, the harder it is to like control them. Because this year there was a new rule again with X Game that I've been mixing it up a lot. Is you needed to have two distinctively different tricks, right?
So X Games Big Air, the only rule consistently is that the two tricks have had to have been different.
Right.
In X Games Big Air for you to score. We had I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2014 or 2015, but Fabian won or he got second, I believe, and his two scoring tricks we kind of realized after the contest were the same trick. So he
Mm.
essentially ended up on the podium with the same trick. So then it became for the next several years, oh well, we have to figure out a way to make it so they have to be different. That's when we got the right and left variety in X Games for a couple of years, which was a bit dangerous for the competitors. So this year had none of those rules in terms of like right, left. You don't need to do different takeoffs, but the only rule to our understanding as judges for the entire event in Big Air was that the two scoring tricks had to be different. And then what the big issue I guess came to be was what we determined to be different.
But what is different? It's like it's it almost gets back to like a stoner talk where you're really high. Is like, what does different mean?
Exactly.
What is different? Like, are you
Exactly.
different, bro?
You different, yeah. I mean, and that's the whole thing too. And that's where I mean, we still get hung up. Like, there's a way that event pans out, and he wins gold with forward, left, nose butter, 1980, two of them, both getting a 48, but one's a double, one's a triple.
Hmm.
Is that abiding by the rules or is it not? And in our um, quick. I mean, we probably had 20 seconds to determine whether, like, I'd say less actually, probably 10 seconds to determine, is this a trick that we're going to separately reward him for? Are we about to give him 248s for two forward, left, nose butter, 19s, double or triple cork? Like regardless of that, two tricks that are that similar. Are we about to give him the win for this? And that's where, I mean, me as head judge, I'll take all the blame for this because this
So
really
it
was
was
up in the air.
so it was a conscious decision. It was there was no miss.
There was no miss at all. It was a conscious decision that the nose butter trip and the nose butter double were not significantly different enough that I felt they could be rewarded. I thought if he was getting rewarded for that, he could be getting double rewarded for doing essentially the same takeoff with a nose butter even and rotation. And like, granted, it is different. Like, I'll argue with anyone any day that says those two tricks are not different. But in the situation of X Games, I did not feel in that time that those were different enough to justify awarding him twice for that, which would give him the runaway win in that contest. I really, and again, like, situationally, I thought he was going to drop one more time and do the switch quad again. We
Mhm.
we purposely did not hook him up on his landed quad, air quotes, attempt because it wasn't really a quad. It was really wobbled out. And then this also brings up my other point. Had he landed that last trick, his switch quad prior, that he did, that was like really a double or triple, maybe. I don't know if you're that familiar with remembering it. And he lands that, and we score that appropriately. And then if he comes and does the quad, the same exact rotation, same exact grab, same attempted trick, but done a little different, is that a new trick? Or is the quad and that triple different? Switch, like, where do you draw the line in there? So I get, like, in the moment, that's where we drew the line, that they were too similar to be rewarded separately, and one score counted out the other. He got the same score for both of them. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's where it fell. Like, again, it's been hotly contested. I've heard a lot of feedback, and people, but like, as to like, contests have rules, and also depending on how much that was actually explained to competitors prior to that, that we're what we were expecting, and maybe that's a gap that needed to be filled.
And now it's time for a first sponsor break. Planks Clothing has been making rad ski gear for rad humans since 2009. If you're part of the lucky ones who are still skiing, they've got you covered for dry slope or summer glacier sessions with riding hoodies, bibs, pants, and more. If you're like me and you're in summer mode, they've also got great streetwear for your off-season missions on and off the hill. Planks Clothing is a dope brand that mixes quality with style at an affordable price. Go check them out at planksclothing.com. Support companies that support skiing, support Planks Clothing. Well, I'd say personally, I would say they are two different tricks, but I totally understand where you're coming from in your perspective. And I wouldn't even debate with you. I think, well, it's easy to say for me because I'm not him, or I'm not, I'm not. It might be harder for him that is, the actual guy impacted by it. But it is hard to have that differentiating thing where, um, I remember A Hall and Teal really had distinct tricks that were totally different from one another. So then it's really easy to make the distinction and give them great scores. But you're right that it's hard to be more similar than that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at, like, the other funny thing about this too is A Hall won, and he did a 4 dub 19 Buick and a switch dub 21 Buick, which are the same trick, but one of them switch. And it's like, but that's black and white. That's switching forward. That's two different tricks. And under everyone's understanding of the sport, those are two different tricks. But I mean, snowboarding also. If you're in the booth with snowboarders, they're literally looking at, okay, back 14 with this grab, doubles, triples, singles, quads, whatever is irrelevant. And more or less, like, I've kind of been on the same page where trying to, like, look at it in a linear approach to a 19 is a 19, regardless if that's done double, triple, whatever. And there's also ways that people are attempting these tricks with different grabs that do not allow them to look the same. And my initial impression of Matei's last trick, the nose butter dub 19 with the Japan grab, was that he went for the nose butter triple with Japan instead of safety, and then upon grabbing, did a slightly different rotation and leaned into it and did the double, not a full triple, still, again, leaning towards my understanding that maybe they are too similar to be rewarded separately and to give him the win with two tricks that are forward, left, nose butter, 19. No, I mean it really could have gone either way, and like again, I feel for him because like he he won that contest in the eyes of many, and like as far as doing the two gnarliest tricks of the day, I'll give it to him. I mean, two of the top three gnarliest tricks of the day, I'll give it to him. But with with the scoring system and the way that we understood the X Games format to be, we couldn't justify it that day.
I wish him good health, and I hope he doesn't get many injuries. But if he stays healthy, I don't think, you know, I think he'll have a great career, and we'll have plenty of
Oh
medals to look back on.
my goodness, yeah, this kid is I mean, he's a phenom. His skiing ability is unbelievable, and I really, uh, it was with a sour taste in my mouth for him not to win because I wholeheartedly expected him to win that contest. I expected him to come into the Olympics and win that big air as well. But again, like you said, I do think his career is uh, just getting started, and he is on track to really change the game, especially so in the jump realm, stuff that we've never seen before.
It's interesting what you say about snowboarders that think of a certain degree of rotation and don't see a difference between a double and a triple, like in a broad sense. And I think that's where in skiing there's a different way of seeing it, because I think that's where the skiing vision was different. People were saying a dub is not a triple. It's, the cork difference makes the difference.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it can go both ways because I mean, I remember in the beginning of halfpipe dub 12s when everybody started doing double 12s. Kyle Smain, another halfpipe skier from Tahoe that I grew up with, was in these contests doing single cork 12s with tail grab, and I had just started judging, and immediately the initial feeling is okay. The dub 12 is clearly harder than the single cork 12. Well, why? How? Like how is that easier? Like the single cork 12, that might be more difficult to be able to contain that amount of spin to one axis rather than I mean, obviously a double, a triple requires some type of commitment that you're not getting out of a single cork. You're literally dipping your head under your body additional times. However, um, does that help with the way with landing these things? Are you carrying a lot more momentum if you're keeping it on one axis? You know, you saw Tesla do switch 14 in the Olympics in big air, and like an upright switch 14 is really really hard to land because that's a lot of rotation to stop all at once. Switch double 14 has a little bit more maybe downward momentum towards the landing in which like it has a nice convenient place to land that's not just coming out of four lightning quick spins.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I think of people that do, let's say, a straightforward 12. That's something you rarely see, because at some point spinning straight, like, how do you say that, like not corking your spin, just doing a
Yeah, upright
straightforward
or
upright 12
exactly.
is something you don't see.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like, is that because it's difficult? Is it because it's outdated? Like,
I think there's really a difficulty to it.
I mean, there has to be. Like, it is difficult.
At some point your head just wants to dip a bit and cork. I don't know, never been to that realm of spinning, not even close.
Yeah, exactly. We're just talking hypotheticals now because we'll never know anymore.
I think Henrik, when he was really young, did a straight up 16 switch 16, and then there was Torin at a slope that did a switch 18. That's like insane stuff.
Yeah, I think Henrik did. I was with Henrik when he did a Switch 14, I believe it was, at the Jib Academy, and that had to have been in 2007. And Henny was 16, and that was the last year he was allowed to compete in the Jib Academy. So he only
Mm.
got to do 1 year. Yeah, I mean, Switch 14 at that point in time, like, I think only Schiller had done it, and then Henny stepped to it at a Jib Academy finals. But, like, the amount of rotation you see coming around on an upright spin like that. And then, yeah, Torin, I believe his is either a 14 or a 16 that he did in the Mammoth slope style. I think it was a 14.
18.
It was an 18?
Yeah, it was an 18.
Wow, okay. I'll have to rewatch that one.
Yeah, I think it's a news cooler somewhere, but yeah,
I remember the course. I remember how quick it was, and I remember that he spun just like a madman on that.
it's like a switch 10 mute, and then the Annie lets go of the grab and just wraps it.
God, yeah, he's such a legend.
So at the Olympics, there was the head judge, there were a lot of judges. You were a trick caller. When you told me that, my mind exploded because it seemed like the most fun job because you get to be part of it all and you don't have the stress of, you know, judging or misjudging something. And yeah, explain that whole position.
Yeah, so I mean that's become a big part of judging lately, especially with the progression of the sport, is making sure that everybody's seeing and identifying the same tricks. Like we don't ever want a misidentified trick or judges uh, punching in scores that are not accurate as to what just happened in front of them. So this is the first contest that I really uh, actually, yeah, that I've been involved in which we had like a designated trick caller, somebody that was hired just for that purpose. And initially, the role was more so to so like obviously as a trick caller, it in any judging you have a trick caller with overall impression. You have one person that's designated to verbally say everything as it's happening, so that everybody is writing down the same thing, and or if that person that's saying what is happening messes up, you have 5 to 9 other people that are fact checking you immediately and saying, no, no, that wasn't a 12, that was a 16. You say, okay, okay, my bad. Like we all have the same notes. So it's pretty much just a reason and the ability to have consistent notes with everybody. So this is the first contest that had a separate trick caller, somebody that was not part of the judging panel trick calling. I was pretty psyched to do that because it just meant I got to be a part of the Olympics, be there, and not really have the responsibility or the weight on my shoulders that this is me out there punching scores. And like obviously, like a lot of those, that whole crew are some of my best friends, and I've traveled the world with all of them. And to for them to go to the Olympics and not for me to not be there, really, I would have felt like it was a shame. I really wanted to be a part of their Olympic experience as well. So it was. Yeah, it was pretty cool to be able to do. It was initially, my understanding was that it was for TV only, because with SBS you're supposed to also be able to, as the run is being replayed on the screen, visual prompt of what that trick is supposed to be typed out on the bottom of the screen. So as they finish the run, they go up, they're showing the replay of jump one. You're seeing the replay. You're also seeing they have the written down trick as to what it was. Switched up 12 blunt, let's say, and you're seeing that on screen. It shows the score index, and then it moves to the next feature. It shows that trick. It shows what it is. It shows the score. So it's supposed to be part of the broadcast. However, the Olympics didn't seem to use that on their broadcast. So I was just trick calling for the panel and for the athletes' records, so that they had, because on their scoring sheets afterwards, it had a full account of every trick done by all the athletes afterwards. So yeah, I mean, like I think it was a cool thing to have, just have another person that doesn't have a judging responsibility, that is able to understand and just call out the fine points of a run. And I think it was really helpful to have, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I really did not anticipate being at this Olympics. Ian Meter was the U.S. judge. It's a really big priority to have national diversity at the Olympics, so no repeat nations. I knew Ian was judging me when I started competing. He has been judging for a decade longer than me, so I knew he was going to be judging that. So I didn't think I was going to be a part of this Olympic panel. So it was a bit of a last minute addition to be able to do, and I was pretty excited. Again, really exciting. I got to be in the room with him and not have any of the true responsibility that my name is tied to a score at the end of the day.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. I'm stoked to have Dickens Restaurants as a sponsor once again this season. I've been a lifetime fan, so I'm always happy to share the good word. Dickens is a family-owned fast food restaurant chain with 12 locations in the Montreal region. They've been famous since 1954 for their great food, especially their flat hamburgers and their spicy sauce. Talking about their sauce, it's been available since last year in many Metro grocery stores all over Quebec. Dickens is my number one fast food spot, so if you come by Montreal, you gotta check it out. Support companies that support skiing, support Dickens restaurants. Again, going back to people maybe not understanding fully how judging works. Um, the idea of having someone as a trick caller is a super good idea to mitigate risk and to just make sure that there is no fuck ups.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the only recourse that athletes have to call into question a score in this day and age is that they think the judges misidentified something. So there's just a ton of importance on us getting it right. Like I feel like that's all judges are ever trying to do on any day is get it right. Like we're not trying to uh, pay any favors to anybody or like hook anybody particular up. We just want to get the result correct. And this is another an added tool that I think helps everybody focus a little bit more on the contest at hand if nobody that's actually judging is verbally saying it. And every contest that I judge, I'm usually the person trick calling, so I felt it was a pretty easy transition for me. I have a hard time shutting up when I'm in the booth in terms of saying what's happening anyway.
So how was it in the moment? Like, let's say someone does a dub 16 mute. You call the dub 16 mute. Do you call it while it's in the air? Do you call it like you wait for the trick to end just to be sure? Do you say anything? Like if you notice, let's say he missed the grab, do you say dub 16 mute, but he missed the grab? Like, do you have any input on details or?
Um, so Hey, exactly. I mean, very yeah, good question. With that stuff, I was trying to do I know. I mean, for the most part, you understand based on the mechanics of when they take off the lip exactly what trick they're going to do, like rotation and grab. Especially based on we're watching practice, we understand what they've been trying. You have a good understanding. So for the most part, I'm calling the trick in the air prior to them landing on the ground. At the very latest, it's within 2 seconds of when they've landed on the ground that the trick is said. Everybody has a verbal account of what happened, and you're going off of. And in terms of noting mistakes, that's something that I really tried to keep my mouth shut about in the Olympics. When I'm actually a part of the judging panel and I'm a trick caller, part of that panel, you can lean a little bit more into, oh, switch nine, no grab kind of stuff and really get those details. But what I took my role and responsibility more so as just the literal translation of what was attempted on that. The other judges were there to say no grab, miss grab, short grab, just a touch, whatever. But I was just giving the exact recount of what happened. And oftentimes, like, what do you mean he didn't grab on that one? It's like, dude, I know he didn't grab on that one. I'm saying he tried this and he missed that grab. So you guys got that in your notes and you guys are going to reflect that in your score.
So there's a distinction between what he tried and what he did, kind of, or and what he landed, kind of.
Exactly. Or like what he tried versus a comparison of how well was it done?
Yeah,
Like how well
yeah.
was it executed?
He tried a dub 16 blunt. Did he get the blunt? That's for you to
I,
decide.
exactly. And that's the judging conversation. But yeah, like on paper, he did a dub 16 blunt. Whether or not I mean, if he really missed the grab entirely, I would say dub 16. I wouldn't even include the grab in the documented version that is being passed along to the competitors and everything, you know. But the judges are the ones that are, yeah, we're actually making those distinctions as to the execution of the specific maneuvers.
It's so deep.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I'm just realizing how much there really is to judging as a
It,
whole.
and I'm stoked on the episode because we really touch on many, many things. Um, but yeah, you mentioned that you got to go to the Olympics. How was that experience for you? As you said, you've been judging for what, 10 years now, if not more. And first Olympics now.
Yeah, just before this phone call, I actually was digging through my Instagram to see when my first contest that I judged was, and yeah, it's I've been still doing this less than 10 years. But again, if you had told me in 2013 at my first contest that I would be going to the Olympics to accompany the judging panel, I would have just laughed in your face. You know, I didn't really think it was a possibility. And again, at the time, the Olympics was the new thing; like that was happening the following year, the first
Yeah, there
Olympics.
still was no
Um,
Olympics.
there was no Olympics, yeah, and so uh, it really was a unique experience going over to China, especially China during the end of the pandemic. Who really knows at this point? Uh,
All dressed thing like China, COVID.
yeah, Olympics. Like I mean, it was so overwhelming, but it was something that I felt, I mean, honored more or less to be a part of, even though I wasn't actually punching in scores. Like again, the reason that I judge and the reason I'm involved in this is because I care about the future of the sport and the way that it's presented to the public. Because I really do believe that the way that it's presented to the public helps dictate the involvement in the future. I want nothing more than for this sport to be a thriving sport that I can look back on in 30 years and say, man, I'm proud that that sport is what raised me. Like that was my sport. I don't need to take credit for it or anything. I just want to be able to be proud of the sport that I took part in for so many years. And that's why I judge. So at the Olympics, obviously that's a huge venue. Everyone's looking at it. So it was an honor to be able to go. But yeah, with all of the compound factors going into this year, it was nerve wracking, even up to the day that we went. And like with the amount of COVID tests, all the precautions that were going on prior to the Olympics, it was really took a lot away from what the experience that we were about to embark on was, and just was kind of scary. Like, am I going to get to China? Am I going to get out of China? Like, what's it going to be like? And because of the flight situation, I myself and the U.S. judge Ian Meter flew through Europe to China. So I'm not like, if you're really thinking about that, that is the opposite way of the world. I'm in California, and I flew Reno to San Francisco, San Francisco to Washington, Washington to Paris, Paris to Beijing. So that's 3/4 of the way around the world just because of travel restrictions. There's not a lot of flights to China, but overall, I mean, it was a really good time. The crew that was there was great. I feel like for skiing, I was really proud of what this Olympic looked like in terms of what it meant for the culture of skiing. And yeah, it was one hell of an experience. Really, there's so many different parts of it, and like there were highs, there were lows. I was really not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, understanding that, man, I have literal 3 weeks in China in this COVID situation. Like when I couldn't wait to leave at times, but like overall it was really exciting and a cool experience, and I'm hoping to be able to be part of future Olympics to see what a non-COVID Olympics would
Yeah.
truly look like.
Right. And next one is in Italy, right? Cortina?
Italy, yeah, 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Milano Cortina, that one should be pretty sweet.
Yeah. And now it's time for another sponsor break. Access Board Shop is the dopest shop in skiing. They've been in business for 20 years and are still passionate about everything related to skiing. If you need to update some of your ski gear, they've got you covered with some great deals on a lot of stuff from this past season. And if you need some stuff for the summer season, they've got you covered with a bunch of products like glasses, shoes, streetwear, skateboards, and much more. Support companies that support skiing, support Access Board Shop. So you were involved in all events. Halfpipe,
Yes.
big air, slope, men, women. So that's a ton of work.
Yeah, and I mean, even through the 3 weeks, you'd think that how could you really be occupied doing any ski contest for 3 weeks? But with all the practice days, all the prep time that we really did spent on course watching skiing, there was not a dull moment in the 3 weeks. There was not a lot of time where we were really sitting around. But yeah, it was a busy week, and like I was mentioning earlier, but I don't know if I ever actually drove the point home. But David was very, very dedicated to making sure that the result from this contest was the best one that the crew could possibly achieve. That there would be nothing to talk about, nothing to debate afterwards. So the scrutiny with which the crew watched practice, the notes that were taken, the conversations they were having beforehand, was taking up another level to any other contest I've ever been a part of. Just the prep going into the contest. Everybody was very aware of the circumstances that they were stepping into and wanted to do their best and put their best foot forward.
Yeah, I think you guys really did a great job. If there's one thing that I didn't necessarily agree on on the moment when it happened, and I want to have your thoughts on it, is
Yeah.
I thought and it's not a disagreement, it's more on my judging and as a viewer. When Andre landed his run, I thought he would be on the podium at the end in slopestyle. Like, I was watching him with my girlfriend, she knows less about free skiing, and I was kind of explaining what he was doing good and less good. And his final run, I was like, that was super good. Like, I don't know where he'll be, but he'll be on the podium.
Yep.
I really thought it would be. And then after that, I was like, yeah, I guess, like, it's not. Jesper also deserved it. Like, I'm not, taking anything away from Jesper, but I genuinely thought Andrew was on the podium.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like coming from somebody who didn't actually judge but was like there for all of it, like I really in the heat of the moment, I thought for sure, even that run with the mistake was second or third at the end of the day. Like I really didn't. I thought that was going to be on the podium 100%. I did not think that Andre was going to end up in fourth with that run. And he did have a slight mistake. I believe it was jump one in his actual scoring run,
Okay.
and it was I'd have to rewatch to like I don't want to spout off on something that I don't really
Yeah.
remember, but it was a length of grab issue that was no, I think it was the second to last feature. It was a length of grab issue, and that's what was the determining factor. Was they felt his grab needed to be executed better than it was. That's why he got the score he did.
Mm,
And with SBS, it's really trackable. He could look at that and say, "Oh damn, they really got me on this one because it must have been the grab when they watch replays."
right.
Um, but I mean Jesper too, like he had a run, man. Like, and it really, I feel like the biggest piece of criticism I've seen on the internet after the Olympics that I did not expect is people saying that Jesper got robbed in slopestyle and that he should have won or got second. And for me, I'm like, oh well, like it makes sense to me, but it is interesting to me that the ski community that anyone says that because it didn't necessarily have that impression of me. His run was amazing. He has a lot of really subtly difficult things that he's doing that other people aren't, but um, it just didn't occur to me, you know. So I was really interested when I started to hear that feedback. I thought the feedback was going to be, oh, Andre got screwed. He should have been in second or third. And I was going to be like, yeah, I mean, maybe I tend to agree. I wasn't judging, but I could have seen it go that way. But everyone was about Jesper, not about anything else, which I thought was quite interesting.
On my end, what I saw was more people focused on his tantrum that he had, and I felt
Yes,
bad for him
yeah,
because it's like the guy puts everything into it. He just came back from a knee injury. It's like his life is dedicated on that. Is the guy? He's human. He's
not an
not
easy.
a.
It's not an easy position to be like pitched as the villain for a sport, you know. And like that kid, I can tell you for sure is unbelievably nice, unbelievably dedicated, and working harder than anyone else out there. And to come back from his knee surgery to be able to compete in that event, in and of itself, was an accomplishment. And he put down runs that put him in contention. And he got upset at the end. You know, like he did
Mhm.
the trajectory of his comeback didn't align with what he expected, and everybody took the opportunity to really come at him hard about that. But can you really fault him? Like again, all you were talking about, yeah, like hockey and stuff, and I guess I'm a bit more of a basketball fan than I have been watching hockey in recent years. But like everything boils down to the fact that everyone's just a person out there, and
Yeah.
despite how achieved they are in any respect. Like they're allowed to have these personal outbursts. And they're also allowed to have moments that aren't perfect. And like I guarantee you, this is just going to fuel his fire, and he is going to come back even harder. And this next couple contests here is going to be scary with the path he's on.
Again, not to bash anyone. Everyone's a human, and no one's perfect. But I found that odd because to me, the moment that stood out most was Tess after Big Air that started crying, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
you just finished second. It's all good. Like, yeah, you wish you were first, but like you're
yeah,
second at
that
the Olympics, and you didn't necessarily deserve to be first. Like, Eileen won, and it's all good.
and that's all these things too. It's like there was so much made of that situation, and it's like, how old is Tess?
I don't
Twenty
like eight.
nineteen?
Okay, yeah,
Who knows? Like
she's young. She's young.
she's young.
Yeah,
How can I possibly fault how her initial reaction to losing a contest that she had won in her head? She landed that second run. It was over. Like I
yeah,
mean, and everyone thought it was over. She was in first. I didn't think that Eileen necessarily had what it took to step up and come up over Tess in that. I thought Eileen was playing for second at that point, and then for her to step up and do that, and for Tess to just like finish just below, I could see it being difficult. I do feel like a bit more was made out of it than maybe could have been because it's like yeah, it's emotional stuff, and
yeah.
finishing second, it still isn't finishing first. Like she still got hated on by the French press. It's not
Really?
wow, Tess got second place. It's what happened and why didn't she get first? Because she was the favorite. She was the one that was coming
Yeah, I
into it.
think the French are really good with those types of drama stuff.
It seemed
Um,
to have had a lot of pressure on the situation. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier with the Olympics in general, it just adds a different layer of pressure and a different layer of scrutiny that we've never had to deal with before. Like, when does anyone care about skiing? And until the Olympics. I really think, I mean, the women right now in skiing is the most exciting part of contest skiing for me, like flat out. Women's slope and big air is really where all of everything's coming together. Like, you have this group that if everyone's healthy, they're all pushing the limits on such a like a delicate basis every single day that it really. I mean, that's the contest I want to watch. And these girls are like, it's fun to expect a world in which everybody's all friends, but like, can you achieve that level of competition if everyone's friends? Do they actually hang out when the contest isn't happening, or are they just keeping on a smile to not look like the bad person on air? I really, the competitive spirit, I'm always curious about that, because like, I really do think the cool part of our sport is that everyone could be happy for everyone, and like that Burke, Colby, Henrik podium in Big Air was huge. Seeing the camaraderie, how stoked they all were for each other in three different nations, no affiliation with any other reasons. But yeah, I mean, like, who's to say that is how you need to like do it? Like, I guess there are two different routes, and one makes for a competitive storyline that'll be pretty interesting to watch play out over the next couple of years.
yeah, and you're right about girl skiing. To me, it really feels like right now is kind of a golden era for girl skiing, for women skiing.
For
Um,
sure.
I don't know, like with Kelly, with Eileen, with Tess, with Mathilde, with Olivia coming out of Quebec.
Oh
It,
yeah. I mean, it's just it really is stepping up all at once, and it's so exciting because, I mean, again, like, the men's side of it, we're just dealing with like evaluating minuscule mistakes on like a really high level. Like, oh yeah, he only grabbed for a 1080 instead of a 1440 in that 21. That's crap. We really got to hate on him for that today. But the the women are really stepping into a realm in which, like, I'm excited to judge it. It's fun to watch. It kind of reminds me of like the golden era, I feel like, of competitive men's slope skiing, which was like the TJ versus Charles Gagne era, where it's like, all right, both of them are going to put down a switch 10, and whoever does it cooler that day, a little bit bigger, is like going to have the edge. And it just, yeah, it's really exciting, and they're progressing at a rate that, I mean, airbags have helped a lot, but like rail skiing as well, like what Kelly has done for women's rail skiing over the past couple of years, just by setting a standard and then making them all catch up, um, it has made it exponentially better to watch and harder to judge for sure.
yeah, I did an episode with Kaya Tursky. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
the originator.
yeah, exactly. And I was looking back at it, and it's back in the days, Kaya was good on rails, but she was kind of standing out on her own as, she was the only one, not to be mean to anyone, but, she was on a level on her own. That now it's like they're all young Kayas.
Totally, yeah. It's I mean, again, if you had told me even 4 years ago that like Kelly wasn't just going to dominate everything, I would question because Kelly, for a while, it really seemed like there was nothing stopping her. There was no ceiling to her, and there was nobody that could even ever touch her in any realm. And there was no sign that progression was going to catch up, especially so in slopestyle. Like big air, again, airbags have helped a lot. Half pipe, there are girls that are focusing on that more, and like the level is really progressing. But um, Kelly, like the fact that all of these ladies have come up and met Kelly where she was leading the pack, and now a lot of them have passed her. Like, not rails again. I'll still say Kelly has a tier up on most everybody. But then you do look at the Olivia, like
Dude.
Olivia is going to be on. I mean, she is unbelievable. Her style, her ability. I saw her put out an Instagram edit just yesterday that I was like, Switch 4. Oh my god, girl! Like, this is she's good. I'm really excited for her in the future.
Yeah, she has rail skills, but also jumping wise. And I think it's the whole package, the technicality, but also a really good style. Really,
Yeah, it's
really
that
good.
Quebec style. It's just I really I'm really excited to see her ski. Megan Oldham still as well. Like her style, her approach to it is really cool. Every nation just really has like a couple standout girls where it used to just kind of be. I mean, again, Kaya back in the day. If she lands her run, it's over. No
Yeah.
one's doing a Switch 10. She's the only one trying it. She only had to do a Switch 7 most of the time, but now they're all being pushed to their limits, and it is up in the air every single day. There's 8 of them that are
Hmm.
like right up there and competing, and like they've all got their different approach. Johanna Keeley is doing everything with like, I mean, her Switch Dub 10 right now is one of the most stylish jump tricks, guy or girl, period, in my opinion. And then like them pushing rotations to 16s on jumps. We're gonna start seeing that in slope style. Maybe they'll start doing it with poles. Eileen's doing the Buick grab. Like, where does it stop? It's just getting so interesting.
You spend a lot of time in the judging side of things, but you also have another big role in the industry, which is marketing director at Surface Keys. Am I right? Is that's your role?
Yeah. It's hard to quantify what I'd feel my actual role is because I've just taken on so many responsibilities with it all.
And yeah, I
Uh,
wanted to touch on that also because the skiing world, I think we could do another whole episode on that, but the ski industry side for the actual ski product has been really evolving and really taking a lot of turns in the past 10 years. Like Salomon has stopped making freestyle or park skiing skis. Rossi has stopped making park skis basically. There's new brands coming out that have come out in the past 10 years and made a big impact, like Vishnu or ON3P. There's also J that has started in the past 10 years. Then there's the bunch who have started 1,000 skis this year. um, how does the market look like for skis these days? Like what's the outlook that you have these days?
it's interesting because like obviously I was a sponsored skier and like I rode for Solomon in the early days and I ended up getting sponsored by Surface and I want to say like 2010 2009 or something and I rode for Surface throughout the end of my like uh, sponsored skier career. I would say like putting out videos and competing and everything. But yeah, I mean, the landscape has changed so much, even just from saying like my roots riding for Solomon back in the mid 2000s. Solomon was the player in skiing. You know, like they had everyone. They had the Jib Academies where they were acknowledging all this new talent. They were doing outerwear, helmets. Like I rode for Solomon head to toe, the boots, the outerwear, helmets. And then for a brand like that that has such a stake in skiing to just pull out of the park skiing world entirely, and like they still have riders, but they don't really market a park ski. They don't really do it, and I think a lot of the large companies really just kind of came to terms with the fact that they just didn't want to be involved in the park skiing world because it was a bit hard to keep up with in product demands with breakage and warranties. Like park skiing is more demanding on equipment than
Hmm.
just about anything else you can sell equipment for. You know, you're going to break skis. You doesn't matter what skis you buy, you're going to break skis when you're learning to ride park. And if you're like at the very least, you're going to damage your edges, you're going to damage your base. Like you're going to hurt your ski.
Yeah.
And I think larger ski companies, yeah, maybe just got tired of dealing with that a little bit. And you do still see companies like, I mean, K2, Atomic are good ones. And now with like Kai and Noah running the marketing on those, so you really understand that, hey, like somebody that understands park and pipe is working in a high capacity at marketing at that company. So it will be valued in a way that maybe it wouldn't have been if it was just a race driven company or touring or backcountry, you know, which I feel like some of these brands maybe have started to focus on and hone in towards over the years. But it's interesting. It's very competitive. Like on a like I with Surface, I just really wanted to. Uh, I mean, once I got involved, I didn't want to see the brand die. You know, like Surface had such a long standing importance to me as a skier and through my career that I really didn't want to see it not represent something in skiing, be a brand that participated within skiing.
Hmm.
And that was kind of just taking a look at that and trying to evaluate, okay, where does it fit in? Like, does it make sense to make park skis? And I still do think that there is an underserved community in the park world that is not trying to just conform to what the other brands are putting out. And like again, then you see companies like Vishnu and ON3P popping up that are just having tremendous success by not being the norm, putting out a different product, a different vibe, different energy. And I really do think that's important to the culture of skiing. And again, like that's how we got Armada. That's how we got Line. We got these guys that weren't getting what they needed by the people that were giving them skis or supporting them, or even the equipment wasn't being made in general at the time. And then they took a passion and needed to do it. And I respect what the bunch guys are doing with 1,000 skis. I think that I'm really curious to see how that one goes over the next couple years. But I really do feel, the small ski brands um, are really like in a different realm of skiing, and just like I feel in a lot of times invested in the core in a way that other brands don't bother maybe.
There's really been an evolution in marketing with the specialization of skiing where, let's say, when Tanner was in his prime, a company would sponsor him because he was the full package. He was repping the street skis, or the more park oriented skis. He was doing street skiing, but also competitions and half pipe and big air and slope style and backcountry. So it was the whole deal. You sponsored him and you got the whole package. And as skier specialized, some brands were like, okay, well, I don't want to sponsor necessarily someone who only does street, or um, it seems to me like there's been less and less interest in comp skiers, when maybe back in the days there was like a top 20 that were known, and now there's so many that maybe the value is kind of diluted a bit, marketing wise.
Coming from somebody who like is very involved in the contest world and involved in the ski marketing side of things, I see very, very little marketing utility in the contest realm of skiing.
Especially with what we've said, that like a World Cup in Switzerland, like a random World Cup, no one will necessarily watch it. There's bragging rights marketing wise if you win it or you're on the podium, but other than that,
And I think there's a lot more tied up in those podiums, for the bigger companies, for the Atomics, for the for Solomon and everything. They've got more at stake to try to get somebody with the skis on the podium, so that when those parents that are buying their skis at the shop see the Solomon Park ski, they're like, oh yeah, well, I saw Noah Bowman competing in X Games on these, and hell yeah, you can get these skis, and I mean, I really think the contests, also the way that contests are like marketed in general, the fact that they all have to wear bibs, that they're not really getting a chance to like put their own brand out there. It's like all really focused around like they've got to wear a bib.
yeah.
They're not looking how they necessarily want to look while they're out there. But the contests are so short lived as well. Like again, coming from somebody who judges these contests, I have a harder time remembering the podium at any specific event, or who won this specific event, than I necessarily would what tricks they did or what run they did in that contest. And I really think social media has just opened it up into another realm where you can have an impact on such a larger community than just your home base. And you look at like Harald Hellstrom and Mainio Ormio on surface, who are living in Finland, and it's like, doesn't matter that they're in Finland. Like they can have the same impact on a skier living in Minnesota as somebody that's living in Minnesota through the content that they're able to put out on their own through their skiing. And it also really, it's like the great equalizer in many ways, just to show talent. Like I found Vincent Authier through his Instagram page, like just like, hey, like looking, hey, this kid from Quebec looks pretty decent. Like I'm gonna see if he wants some skis. This kid looks like he's got some potential, and then like ends up being a great kid that's super driven and really trying to like put out his own content. And you stumble into some gems that if you were really focused on a contest scenario, he doesn't fit into that bound. Like he's not a contest skier.
Regarding your role as marketing director at Surface, one thing that I think is really unique, or as you said, there's kind of two different branches in ski companies these days, but is as many companies have branched out from park skis, you guys make pretty much only park skis, if not for some powder skis and some touring skis, but your catalog is basically only park skis. What's the thinking with a lot of brands that have kind of reoriented themselves to stick to that core notion of park skis?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like understanding that, like maybe not through the product, but through the aesthetic representation maybe of like what it is doesn't fit with people's align, like where they would align in skiing. And I mean, that's a confusing way to say the reason why I felt there was room for surface to enter back into the park market was because I felt there was a demographic of people that aren't being uh, listened to maybe in skiing, and that it's not necessarily like through the product, like not that the product can be that dramatically different, but through the whole package. What when people get invested in a ski brand, I feel they're more so invested in the image and what they feel that image kind of says about themselves and where they align. And I feel like um, that a lot of people really do that through skis, like through just dedicating a path, like, oh, I'm feeling this brand, like I identify with this brand. And you have to almost just give people something to identify with, more or less. And that's the realizing that, hey, I think there's a demographic of people out there that are not resonating with a certain part of skiing, and maybe there's something that we could add that would make them feel more at home and encourage more people to be interested in skiing in this capacity. And I mean, surface used to just mean like tight pants, skiing in jeans, smoking cigarettes, doing like reckless stuff, taps, like, and that was a thing. Like, the graphics spoke to it, the branding spoke to it, and then I really. It doesn't necessarily like point to the exact same trend of skiing, and I feel like that trend has dissolved significantly and like also broadened at the same time. And like everybody's doing taps now, but nobody's wearing jeans skiing anymore. But at the same time, it's like you used to see somebody in the park riding surfaces, and you kind of knew what they were about. And like you go into a park anywhere, and you see somebody riding ON3Ps, and you know that they kind of know what's up. Like on some level, you
Yeah.
got something in common with that person because they are understanding enough that they're on that ski. And I feel like that's what still creates room for these brands to pop up. And I don't think there's going to be any shortage of brands popping up over the next couple of years. Like I really think that the bunch is probably leading the way. I mean, jet skis is another one we haven't even mentioned with that. That's like still really small scale, but that's just them within their own crew making skis on a super limited basis, and it has a whole different vibe that people are trying to figure out a way how to be a part of.
You were saying a lot of people identify with the whole branding of it or the vibe it brings, and I think you're right that it's a lot of that for Surface and ON3P and Vishnu, and that's where maybe you guys chip away a lot from the big players, where the big players, it seems like the core audience is really taken by the smaller brands. Like you won't see
Yeah,
someone core buying I won't name a brand, but a bigger, broader brand. You'll go in the park and core people will have smaller brands.
and I mean the one I would say this is a really good point as to exactly that. But like Talty Dan and what he's been able to do with Arsenic over the years,
Yeah.
it just proves like uh, if you take a community and you care about it and you continue to be a part of that community and be a figure within that community and take advice from that community and listen to that community, they're going to embrace the hell out of you. And like what the ski community has supported him and like wanted to be a part of the way that brand is just really speaks to how the core of free skiing can really like, yeah, find something that supports them and just double down into it and make sure that it succeeds. And I feel like that's been a big thing with Surface. Like when I started working with the brand again, like not as a sponsored rider, but in like a official work capacity, we didn't have much of a standing. Like the brand's identity, I felt had been pretty much just died off over the years. It like really it had been a while since like the glory days of it, and it really maybe wasn't. Uh, it didn't represent what it used to represent. And that was my whole thing, was just like, maybe it's not going to represent the same thing, maybe it's not going to be the same brand, but I have a vision for what I think free skiing would support and where free skiing might need a little bit more, and I think that we can create something that fits in right there. And also wanting to make like quality and affordable skis that aren't going to break, because I know like you break skis skiing park, you will break edges
Yeah.
regardless of what ski you make. But if you're actually paying attention to that stuff in the manufacturing process, you can mitigate those risks significantly by the way that the skis are designed and how they're put together, and the instructions you give for people once they actually get them, detuning and so on and so forth. Like trying to actually create a quality product that the industry desperately needs because skiing is getting so expensive.
Hmm. And you're right on the branding side. I think a lot of it has to do with riders, meaning the riders will help keep the brand alive or keep the brand relevant. And as soon as maybe you fall off rider wise, not being trendy or being on the right trend, then you kind of lose the whole branding battle.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so much of it is rider driven, and I really do try to pay respect to the like. I do have a lot of riders that I feel like took a bit of a risk with like agreeing to ride for Surface even back in the Vince especially is one that I'll say like when I asked him if he would want to ride the skis, it was not this brand that was doing anything for his career. Like it's kind of a joint effort, and
Yeah.
the brands using their platform to be able to promote these up and coming athletes, and the athletes skiers doing their best to try to incorporate themselves into the mix in that realm, and it's a give and take.
Yeah, I think that's something I wanted to touch on with you is as much as for brands, we always think of them sponsoring the biggest rider that is the most known and the best in the world. And it seemed like you guys really took a different path in that strategy where it's no disrespect intended to your team, but it seems like you really went with the local heroes instead of the big name international names. Like it's all people in different places of the world that are big in their region, but are not necessarily huge names in the ski world.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, I also kind of came into this whole thing with like the mentality of not trying to just be short sighted and work with athletes that I thought might boost the brand's maybe reputation right away,
Hmm.
but try to work with people that I felt identified with the core vision of what we are trying to accomplish and would be accepting to being part of a gradual process of trying to build something together and grow as it comes. Like my whole vision for this whole thing is to be able to continue to help the athletes that are working with us that are actually the ones that are promoting the brand and doing stuff out there. But I never really saw the utility, marketing utility, in getting the biggest sponsored athlete. I thought even as like a sponsored skier back in the day, I would be like, man, rather than giving 15,000 to this one person, why didn't they give 1,500 to 10 people? Because those 10 people would be doing a lot more, and like those 10 people also maybe were the people that never had a chance to get paid by a ski company before, never were looked at as a serious person to get the big bucks, because the big bucks were always tied up in the really high name dude that nobody that was unachievable and has been around for a while. So yeah, I really like kind of with the brand being small and like we're not super deep pockets trying to go corporate and just buy people out of contracts. It really was a more grassroots approach and trying to get people like that. And like ultimately, every single person that rides surfaces like that are getting them from me are people that I believe in them and what they bring to skiing in some capacity. It's like whether through their personality or what they're actually putting out on social media. Maybe it's a local presence, but like I really try to limit it to people that I back and that I really feel are a good representation of the brand. Not just picking people based on who I think will sell the most skis necessarily.
It's really cool that you have kind of those two extremes that you're dealing with in your skier career. Like on one hand, you're managing a team of skiers that are mostly park and street skiers. On another week, you'll be in France judging a big air competition.
Totally, yeah, it is polar opposites for sure. But again, like skiing's so small that I guess it crosses over a little bit more than maybe it does in snowboarding. Like I don't think it crosses over quite like that in snowboarding, but yeah, it is pretty interesting. And yeah, I'm traveling across the world to judge a slopestyle event in Georgia that Andre wins. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just again, I'm a big ski nerd, always have been, and just really interested in all facets of it. And like I'm very interested in contest skiing, but it doesn't necessarily. It's not my favorite part of skiing. Like if I'm gonna watch skiing all day, there is a fun part to the contest realm, just in the never before done aspect of it. But overall, I could find skiing that I would jive a little bit more with just to watch.
So to end off the podcast, I have some questions from patrons on Patreon. Will Cameron asks, he was there for the whole Surface, Joystick, and Coswell brand merge. I'd love to have some insight into that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I know how to speak to that at least. Because yeah, I was riding for Surface uh, back in the day as my ski sponsor, and that was right around the time when Joystick was acquired by Surface. Mike Schneider, who is the OG founder of Surface Skis that got everything started, was making it out of his garage, like really small family brand style. He had been running it for a while and was friends with Anthony Bornowski. And when Anthony Bornowski was looking to get out of being responsible for Joystick and running that brand, Mike stepped in and Surface acquired Joystick at that time. I want to say that was probably around 2009 or 2010, maybe. And that was really cool because, again, I had like a really long-standing high opinion of Joystick, especially from Hot Lunch. I feel like was really I wasn't out immediately skiing in jeans after Hot Lunch, but it really did shape my perspective on skiing quite a bit. And that was also the time when Coswell was introduced as the outerwear brand, started by Surface and Joystick, started by Mike Schneider and the guys in that office at the time. And at the time, they were using Nomis snowboard outerwear designs just with different prints. And I was really excited again. Like, I feel that was a time in which the ski industry had such limited individualized options to make yourself look like a free skier. And it was blowing up at that time as well. Like Saga, Lethal Descent were like in full swing, and you were starting to see different colorways. But Coswell, I really liked it. I wore Coswell for the first several years, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, that was like exciting times in my early years riding for Surface, was when it went from just Surface to now it's like this brand trifecta that was kind of in the mix. And just doing some different stuff aside from just skis.
And I think it was cool to have those brands where, you know, these days it seems like if a brand does many different products, it's all under the same brand umbrella. Like Armada does skis and poles and outerwear, but it's all Armada. Whereas those brands were all related, but all really individual in their own image, or, they all stood on their own.
Totally. Yeah. I really, I feel like Mike had a vision back in the day that just everything he would tell me about, like his vision for these brands, I would resonate on and be like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. But his point at the time, Moment Skis was making outerwear, Armada was making outerwear. And if you're a skier and you're riding line skis, do you feel comfortable wearing Armada outerwear? Some people won't bat an eye and say, yeah, no problem. But other people that are buying into the ski brand for the identity, for the look or whatever, might feel less comfortable representing a brand that already has an identity within skiing. So I thought it was really cool to have Coswell as just a complete separate brand that could have its new identity. And I mean, to be honest, in all my Joystick efforts recently, the biggest part about that brand is making sure that it's not just people riding Surface skis are using Joystick poles. It needs to be embracing of all other people on skis. A pole brand does not need to be limited just to the people that are using this specific ski brand. And I really do think that the separate brand names help identify separate identities. And I feel like that really does help in terms of just giving people a way to further identify themselves in a way that they see fitting on the hill.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe to close off that question, how did it end with Coswell? And maybe is there a revival? I think I saw some stuff that there might be a revival of Coswell.
Yeah, totally. So Coswell kind of went through a couple stages. Throughout the early outerwear years, it was I thought it had a lot of momentum through the outerwear game. They had this big campaign planned with Eric Pollard where Eric Pollard was designing quite a bit of the outerwear. And then that fell through, and I feel kind of stopped Coswell's momentum as it was going in the free skiing and like free that world in general. And made a couple more ventures into it with limited product offerings with a couple pairs of pants and a couple jackets for a few years after that. But ultimately, Coswell kind of on the ski side stopped being involved. And Mike, who was at the time very into fly fishing, transitioned it pretty seamlessly into a brand that was doing stuff that was speaking to the fly fishing community, which, I mean, still to this day, Coswell's following, I'd say, predominantly the people that remember the brand are fly fishers in Utah. And then, yeah, so it did the fly fishing stuff for a while. And now that's kind of part of the resurgence of the trifecta. Like I've been working for the past couple years and trying to reestablish Surface in this community, in this world, and bringing Joystick along with it, having a little bit of a different vision. And now Coswell is the brand that I'm attempting to more or less revive and bring back within the ski community. And I really like the logo. I really like where that brand came from. And I really feel that it still could have another resurgence. I haven't limited it necessarily to skiing specific right now, and have tried to do something a bit more outside the bounds of being any one sport specific or showing a bunch of ski videos and people skiing in the new Coswell stuff. But we've been working on getting it back off the ground and doing some soft good pieces, and definitely I would not count out outerwear or other things like that in the future once we start to build a little bit of momentum.
I have some really good memories of the Coswell things. When I think Coswell, the images I have in mind is a Jeff Kiesel riding hood with the kits.
Yep, yeah, Jeff Kiesel, John Ware, like two of my favorite skiers in that era, especially Jeff Kiesel. I swear, like if I had to put down a top 5 favorite skiers of all time, Jeff Kiesel is firmly cemented in there, possibly just behind Dave Crichton.
Yeah, his style was so dope.
Oh,
so dope
he was
and so unique.
ahead of his time, still unmatched in the tap game.
If people have never seen or heard of him, go see the Jeff Kiesel Mount Hood edits around 2010, 2011.
Oh yeah, I think Polar Summer. Unbelievable. Still one of the best edits coming out of Mount Hood is his summer recap from that year.
So second question from Will Cameron, who's a big ski movie connoisseur. What's your favorite ski movie?
All right. I would say all-time favorite is, I'm torn between Ready, Fire, Aim and Forward, because those were like my 2 first ones, the ones I spent the most time watching, the ones that I feel like influenced my want and desire to be a part of this community the most, and like still produce some segments in that movie that I still could go back to and would get me thrilled today. Probably a bit, less of a modern answer for best ski segment, ski films, but yeah, I'd say those are 2 of my favorite. And in terms of new stuff, the Foray movie this past year and the Bulldoze movie had me just enthralled the entire time. So I think there are people that are doing it super right these days, but my nostalgia is kicking in when talking about that.
So let's say you gotta sit down right now. Are you putting on Ready, Fire, Aim or Forward?
I would say, because I've been talking about it a lot lately, I got to see Liam Downey recently, and I was just reminiscing on his segment in Forward. I would say I would probably pick Forward just to get that Dave Crichton segment with the DL Incognito song playing. I think would get me going right now.
The Dave Crichton segment is even if you look at it today and some tricks are outdated, it still bangs.
Oh, for real! Like it's just unbelievable, and his diversity at skiing at the time too. Like, not only was the guy leading the charge in the street rail game at the time, but he was one of the best half pipe skiers in the world. And I think, I was always really impressed with Rob Hewley when I met him, that it's like, man, you're one of the gnarliest street skiers I've ever seen. And at the time I met him, he was competing in Dew Tour pipe, like doing amazing pipe runs. And it's like, how do you find that combo? Then I went to Calgary and you understand. It's just, it's so wild when people, skiing these days, anyone that's skiing half pipe is quite specialized. You don't see them outside of the pipe all too often, especially not hitting the gnarliest street rails and then going and sessioning a 100-foot jump at Aspen and doing like the most subtle switch 3 you've ever seen. So Dave Crichton was ahead of the charge.
Question from Raf Diaz on the surface side of things. You have an interesting strategy on the social media side where you post a lot of your athletes' content. How does that work? What's the strategy? And do you think it's working?
Yeah, I mean, I really do think that like social media is such a critical part of ski marketing right now. It's just kind of where everybody is able to gather and see all of the current content. So that kind of has been my goal with Surface from the beginning, is just being really present on the social platforms where you can actually interact with people and show a better idea of, just kind of what's going on the skis and create a community in that way. Mm-hmm. It's always been, it's a process. And I feel like that's a big part of like really one of the only things I'm asking from most of my Surface guys throughout the year is sharing content, that they're out there getting content and just sharing it with me over a Google Drive that I set up once a year at the beginning of the year with individualized folders so everything can stay organized. But that's mm-hmm. really the most, it's really critical, like from a brand perspective, just to show life and presence, I feel, on social media. And other than having that direct feed of content from the athletes, like it really is borderline impossible for a small brand to be going out and collecting content on the level that these guys are capable of producing themselves on a daily basis. And for the Surface social as well, like my goal has always been to use the content created and shared by the athletes, but to put almost a different spin on it. I really am not, I'm a fan of raw skiing noises, like being able to hear the snow, hear the rails and everything. So I really do try to limit the music on the Surface pages to just being the Surface and Joystick stuff, just to be more just a consistent feel, I guess, without music, more of a raw take with like limited editing within the clips and cuts that we put on the social channels. But I feel like that's really been a central part in the brand marketing. And to be like brutally honest, what is Surface more than an internet ski brand? Like back in the day, it was the brand being talked about on New Schoolers, and we don't have a shop presence. We're not big like Atomic or anything. So I feel that social media, as much as it's changed the industry, has also given a different key of entry for everybody to be able to see and have equal opportunity and seeing the content that they want to see that helps them feel involved in the sport. So we've really put an emphasis on that and collecting content from our people riding the skis, and also trying to help build them up, like Surface, because of this strategy, like we're our social following, I just feel I want to use to help build all of the people on Surface skis that are sharing that content with me up into the superstars that I know that all of them are as individuals. And I really do feel all the Surface riders have something very unique and special about their skiing. And I really enjoy highlighting it over whatever means possible.
The Surface page has 44,000 followers on Instagram. So if one of your riders only has a couple thousand, then it definitely helps them out when you share it. And I think what's cool is you don't necessarily stick to the biggest, gnarliest trick. Like even if it's a smaller trick, or, it doesn't have to be the next big thing to be shared on your social. It's just it feels natural, kind of.
Totally. And I just feel like for skiing, relatability is so necessary, just trying to
I guess that's what I was looking for, relatability.
I feel like that's really been like, and I don't think that skiing is all about the highest levels of success. I was just explaining this last week, that if everyone's comparing themselves against Andre Rigetli, you're not him. Like most people don't have the physical ability to be doing what he's doing every day. However, there are other people that can find ways to lean into their specialties to beat him in a competitive environment, and skiing, if we're only celebrating the highest level of everything, we're missing out on a lot of culture in skiing and a lot of stuff that's happening. I have so much respect for Tall T Dan and what he's doing in skiing, and that he has made one trick that is so accessible for anybody, so popularized. It's not like, yo, only trick, it's a double backflip. This is the prerequisite to being cool if you can do this. It's bringing in a community based on your shared love of doing this stupid act of sliding around snow on wood and plastic and metal. And to celebrate just the highest levels of it is ignoring a large portion of the community out there. So I feel like that's always been a big part too, is just showing all types of skiing, like Topher knew it, riding the ON3Ps. Like, some people may hate on the things that he's doing, but who is anybody to criticize what other people are finding a way to have fun on skis and making it their own, making it something unique that you can only find from him, and being able to establish a cult following for something that some people have such a polarizing opinion on. I think there's room for all of it in skiing.
Yeah, well said. Talty Dan is a boss. I met him at IF3 like maybe 13 years ago now, when we both were just like young ski fans, and it's so sick to see what he's done.
It's amazing, man. I just feel like he's a cultural figure that skiing needs, like we're living in a world in which people, I feel like, are afraid to stand up and take ownership of this sport. And he has, in a way that I think the community embraces, and we need more of. We need more figureheads in the sport that aren't afraid to wear the fact that they're diehard ski nerds through and through, and are just living and breathing for this industry and trying to put together something that appeals to this like very limited subsect of a culture.
Yeah, and you're a good example of that also. That people will learn a lot from the episode we've done.
Yeah, that's again, like, I feel, just unique approaches to staying involved with skiing. I've said this to you before, I think, with the podcast. Like, again, you're figuring out other ways to stay involved in a community and sport that has shaped us. And what more can you ask? We can you can sit around and wait for opportunities to be given to you, or jump right into them and make them happen yourself. And I think that's a good example.
Yeah. Well, thanks for answering the questions, and thanks again for coming on the podcast, Jason. And I think people will enjoy a lot the episode.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm excited to be unbelievably nervous as to what I said when I do hear this thing.
You said some good stuff. Cheers.
Oh, yeah, cheers. Thank you.
So this is it for episode 31 with Jason Arens. I hope you enjoyed our 2-part discussion. It was one of my favorite guests I've had on so far. Big thanks to this episode's sponsors, Access Board Shop, Planks Clothing, and Dick Ann's Restaurant. Peace.